Some of you may know that I used to travel to Vancouver every day from White Rock by bus and then by train. And on the SkyTrain at rush hour, it can be pretty full. And everyone is pretty grizzled, you know, they're in their space listening to their iPods or reading their books or reading the Metro or basically staying in that bubble that they create for themselves in this crowded environment every day. Until someone comes onto the train with the stroller. And then it doesn't matter how invested people seem to be in their books or their music or the newspaper or their laptops. Everything changes almost immediately. What happens is that there's like this electrical energy that just shifts. And the most grizzled of people, the people who look like they are the tiredest, most grumpy, most overwhelmed, all of a sudden transform into smile-making machines. And what they do is anything possible to connect with that little being in the stroller in some funny way with no regard to how ridiculous their faces might look or how their voices might sound, anything to get that little baby to connect with them and laugh and smile. Anybody had that experience? What is it about children that attracts us so much? I think it might be because we see some of ourselves reflected in that little baby. We see children who are just open to everything. They don't care if you've had a bad day. They don't care if you're going through a divorce. They don't care if your assignment isn't done on time. What they care about and what they see is the eyes, the face, the emotion. And that's what they respond to, and that's how we respond to them. In the New Testament, in Matthew chapter 8, the disciples go to Jesus and they say to him, I think they might have been a little competitive at times. And they say to him, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And I'm sure they're kind of jostling, thinking, he's going to choose me, he's going to choose me. And what Jesus does is he leaves them and goes and gets a little child and brings the child back into the group. And he says, I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest. Another time in Matthew 19, the next chapter in Matthew, again, there's this thing about how do we treat children. And parents, obviously, are bringing their children to Jesus and asking him to lay hands on their children and pray with them. And the disciples, probably thinking that they want to protect him, because he's touched and wanted by so many people, are trying to get the parents to take the children away. And Jesus says, and I like the old version, which says, suffer the children to come to me. But I'll read the New Revised Standard Version, Matthew 19, chapter 14, verse 14. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me and do not stop them, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of heaven belongs." So what do we see in these two passages regarding children? In the first reading, where the disciples are asking who is the greatest, we see that Jesus says that we need to change, that we need to be willing to put aside our adult mind and become more childlike in order to experience the kingdom of heaven. So that naturally leads to the question, what is the kingdom of heaven? I know many of us likely grew up thinking that it's something that happens after we die, and that this planet and this experience is simply to be endured in some way until we can die and go to the kingdom of heaven. I think it's kind of a waste of time to do that. So I think we should create the kingdom of heaven right here. I see Joanna's laughing at that at the back there. And C.S. Lewis said this, and I thought it was a really very interesting insight that I had never considered before, but explains the idea of children existing in that kingdom of heaven. He says, "Hell is a state of mind. You never said a truer word, and every state of mind left to itself, every shutting up of the creature within the dungeon of its own mind is, in the end, hell. Heaven is not a state of mind. Heaven is reality itself. All that is fully real is heavenly." Think about that. I have always thought, oh, heaven is a state of mind. Always. It's like we get to choose. We can choose our state of mind. We can choose to live in hell, or we can choose to live in heaven. I'm sure you've all heard that before in this group, because I think I've said that. And yet this idea of no, heaven is, it's our minds that get in the way and create hell for us. Oh, I get that. Because when I look at little children, I don't see them thinking, well, I'm going to have a heavenly day today. I don't see them doing anything except experiencing life. They experience life in all of its flavors and colors, in all of its joy and play, and in all of its pain and angry and I hate you. They experience life. And so the idea of us becoming more childlike is appealing to me. And maybe we need to encourage our mind chatter, our monkey mind, to get out of the way so that we can live in the moment, just like the little kids do. I saw this. I'm sapped for images that have little girls in ballerina costumes. Wasn't it beautiful when you believed in everything? So what's in it for us if we were to become more childlike? What do we risk if we decide, well, maybe we can worry about that later, and let's just enjoy being here right now? Well, let's just look at the power of play. According to the website helpguide.org, play is a relief of stress because endorphins are released when we play. And endorphins are the stress relief hormone. So, we can be responsible adults, but if we allow ourselves time to play, give ourselves permission to play, we can start literally changing the chemicals in our body, relieve stress. Play also improves brain function. You know, chess, checkers, any of those games that are actually played but engage the brain. Sudoku. My mom plays Sudoku at the expert or the diabolical level or something. You know how we all have cell phones? My mom's cell phone is the only cell phone I know where the grid is like hardwired into the screen. I have never seen a cell phone screen that isn't like completely clear and then you don't know what's been on there. Hers actually has the grid. Anyway. My mom plays. Improving relationships. When we play, when we don't take ourselves too seriously, we improve our relationships. We get to laugh with each other. And when we laugh with each other, we make connections. And when we make connections, our relationships are strengthened. And what does that feel like? The kingdom of heaven. Play. Energizing. What can you do to become more childlike, more open, more a sponge for life? Loretta LaRoche is a humorist and inspirational speaker. And a riot. She really is a riot. And she says, life is short. Wear your party pants. Squeeze the day. Don't just seize the day. That's what children do. They ask questions. They hunger for knowledge, not because they need to finish a test, but because they hunger for knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Because it's fun. Childlike. Become more childlike. Think of something where you can play in the next week. Even if it's just for a couple of hours. Go play. Walk. Go jump in a puddle. Whitney Houston sang that beautiful song, The Greatest Love of All. Remember that? I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. The children are our future indeed. And do we not then have a moral obligation to teach them what we want them to become? And does that not mean that when we speak to children, we need to speak to them in a way that uplifts them, that supports them, that finds the stuff they're doing right instead of the stuff they need to improve? Do we not have a moral obligation to make sure that whatever is good for the well-being of the children among us, whether they're right in our family or they're little boys stuck in a cave halfway around the world, that we don't have a moral obligation to ensure their physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being? We know, because we're the grown-ups who have experienced a childhood, we know that there are some things that our parents did, or our ministers taught us, or our schools taught us, that we've carried with us that may not really have served us well. And it is our obligation then to take that learning and turn it around and change, so that the children who are coming up behind us have a different opportunity, so that they know their greatness, so that they know that they are the ones who can lead the way, and that they are the ones who have beauty inside. And the most important thing that we could do in order to create that for children is to create a sense of safety. When kids do not feel safe, that's when they act out. When they don't feel unconditional love, that's when they act out. And then that changes how we respond to them, which changes how they respond. And then they become adults that we call dysfunctional. Or they turn to addiction. Or they become angry. And they don't know how to handle relationships. We have an obligation to take care of our children in safety and love. But we're unity. And we're unity. And what that means is that we don't just look at the metaphorical and maieutic interpretation of a story, which is how things apply to the world around us on the outside, which is all I've spoken about so far. But we also are caretakers of our own thoughts. And if we have a moral responsibility to take care of the children out there, we also have a moral responsibility to take care of the children within us. And often we tend, especially if they're the angry child, or they're the fearful child, or they're the child who doesn't seem so likable, we want to just close that off. We close that off, those parts of ourselves that we call our shadow side. And the truth is, when we close parts of ourselves off, when we deny the feeling that some of those children have within us, we're telling them they're not okay. And when we do that, they resist because they want to be okay and they want to be loved. And so they become bigger and bigger. And what we know to be true is that love trumps fear. And so when we think in terms of the story of Jesus telling the children that they should come, metaphysically for us, Jesus is like our highest consciousness. the example of how we want to behave. And he says, let all of your thoughts, let all of the children come. When they come, we bless them in love. We acknowledge them, even if we're uncomfortable with them, because we are also the caretakers of our thoughts. And those thoughts, those mind experiences that can create hell for us, can be dissolved when we shine the light of love and say, welcome, I've been waiting for you. That song by Whitney Houston ends with learning to love yourself. It is the greatest love of all. We want to become as little children. We want to play. We want to laugh more. Because when we do that, we create and experience the kingdom of heaven, because there is no hell. We want to take care of the children around us, both the little ones and the sometimes very annoying not so little ones. And we want to take care of the children within us, the child within us. We are the Christ consciousness, the Jesus consciousness, the highest possible loving experience. Invite the children to come and love them, love them, love them. God bless.